Okay, let's do some passage planning. So I've got about 3 weeks coming up in July, which is pretty unusual for me, and I want to make the most of it. The weather will play a part, the wind direction, and there are various logistics to do with how long it takes to get from A to B, what crew I'll have at different points. So let's go through some of those things. So the boat is kept on the River Medway here, and I'm going to spend the first 3 days with my mother pottering about in here. Possibly anchor for a night here, and then do the inner Gore Channel to the Ramsgate, which is an all-weather port. And the nice thing about this is it's got really good rail link to St Pancras, London, so it's direct and they do fast trains, so that's helpful for dropping crew off and picking crew up. So really the departure point is Ramsgate. Now let's have a look at the weather. Well, this is a wind map. Obviously we're still a good sort of 2-3 weeks away from our departure point, and this is only showing about a week, but you can see that the prevailing wind direction is generally from the southwest. It's coming from this end to this end. That's not universal, but a few degrees of wind direction change here is going to make a big difference to whether we can make the destinations that I'm about to talk about. So with that in mind, so here's Ramsgate, some key things, and you've got Calais over here, and Boulogne-sur-Mer, and Dieppe is also on the list. And that is the route we'd probably take if the wind direction was on the nose like it's showing now, and we couldn't make the other port that I'd really like to get to. So this here is Cherbourg. Okay, I lied, sorry, here is Cherbourg. And the reason I'd like to aim for here, it's about 30 hours sailing from Ramsgate to Cherbourg on my 35-foot boat that averages over 5 knots, but let's assume 5 knots. So that route there is going to take about 30 hours. Now this is a good jumping off point for the Channel Islands, which I haven't done since I was a teenager. And you've got Alderney and Jersey, and from Jersey you could stay here in St Peter's Port and spend a day here and spend a day here. Could spend a night in St Helier. Probably St Milo is out of reach, it's a bit too far because you've got to get back again as well. So that's probably a good 8 to 10 hours from here to here. So going back to the chart, if the wind is blowing right on the nose, we'd possibly go to Calais. But once you start spending a night here and a night there, you burn through a week's worth of passage planning very quickly, which is why there was the appeal with strong crew to do the 30 hours all the way to Cherbourg, and then in 2 days basically you've done what would potentially take a week to go from Calais to Boulogne-sur-Mer to Dieppe to Fécamp to Le Havre to Cherbourg. You know, that's 5 to 6 days plus, just to be clear. So in terms of travel time, you've got Ramsgate to Calais is about 6 hours, and you could do Ramsgate to Boulogne-sur-Mer probably in about 8 to 9 hours. Or so Ramsgate to Calais, Calais to Boulogne-sur-Mer, Boulogne-sur-Mer to Dieppe is about 10 hours, I think. That's less than 3 hours, and I would like to go to Zentval. That looks quite nice. I've lost you. Anyway, looks a bit shallow, but it's quite close. So a game of two halves, I guess. It would be quite enjoyable doing nice, gentle little hops along the coast, but very possibly by the time we got to sort of round about here, it might be more logical and less of a slog to either jump across and enjoy the Isle of Wight and then come back, or just turn round and come back and do that, and then that would be very enjoyable, and certainly low stress and low effort, and you're not sort of at sea for so long that you're completely knackered and can't enjoy the port. So there's a lot of pluses there. If we were lucky with the weather and got a wind that got us to where we wanted to go in that 30-hour window. So if we looked at, we're not going at this time, but let's just, for example, say we were very lucky and got I thought I saw it. So that, for example, is on the nose. Coming from Ramsgate, you don't want to motor for 30 hours to Cherbourg. If a few degrees makes quite a big difference, when it does that, that means there's no wind at all. See, that again would be a nice run to Bordeaux. That would be a beam reach to Boulogne-sur-Mer, sorry, not Bordeaux. So this is probably, statistically speaking, the most likely option. There are different ones. Interestingly, they don't usually show such a big variation. They usually agree to a degree. So that's 24 knots of wind. So there's a fair bit of wind. That's getting up to sort of a force 6, is it? So yes, force 6 of wind. So the boat can do that, especially coming from behind. And then you've got... So interestingly, they usually agree to a degree, the different data sets for Windfinder. But in this case it doesn't. So if we got this would be a strong wind from behind. That would be a really good justification for going to Cherbourg. We'd probably lose it. See, if you look at the time. So we're not going at this point, but just to hypothetically talk about it. So from about 8 o'clock Wednesday evening to Friday, you've got usable, lovely winds. Actually, if we could get this, that would be nice to go to Cherbourg. And then once you're there, you can jump off from Cherbourg, and it's only about 4 hours to Alderney. And the reason you go, rather than going direct to Alderney, is the currents around here are world famous for being super, super strong, like 8-9 knots of current, which is more than the boat speed, so you'd be going backwards. So you have to go to an all-weather port and then time your departure to work the tides. So 4 hours to Alderney, stay a night in Alderney, enjoy it. And that, again, that's not so much sailing that you're knackered and you've got the energy to go ashore and enjoy yourself. Then maybe 5 hours to Guernsey, St. Peter's Port, and then the reading suggests that you use this as a jump off and go to some of these rocky, you can't really stay out unless, I would imagine, unless the weather was absolutely idyllic, you would go out for an anchorage and enjoy some time in the sun during the day and then come back into St. Peter's Port at night. But that looks like a lot of fun. So if it took us 2 days to get to Cherbourg, and then you spent the night in Cherbourg, and then on day 3 or even day 4, depending on how tired we were after that 30-hour sail, maybe day 5, the night of day 5 there, the night of day 6 there, the night of day 7 having spent the day out back there, then you've got day 8, So, and then we're getting back into, so that's probably what, an 8, 9, 10 hour sail back into Cherbourg. And then we've got to work out, got to get the boat back home in good time. And you've got various options. You've got statistical likelihood of the wind going the right way. But you could potentially go to the camp or Dieppe. That's quite a long hop, 10 hours, and then that's another. I'd quite like to go to St Val's, potentially Bordeaux, or if we wanted to, we could jump across to the Isle of Wight, which I would love to do, but it's going to be absolutely busy. The schools won't have broken up just yet. I think they'll be just breaking up. So anyway, those are the options. So in summary, we'll be meeting in Ramsgate, and then depending on what the wind is doing, we might go to Calais and Boulogne and do sort of gentle hopping along the coast and sitting in cafes and enjoying marinas and evenings. And then we could potentially just turn around and come back again. That's one option, probably the most likely, statistically likely option. Another option is to do a long hop direct from Ramsgate, 30-hour sail to Cherbourg, and then pottering around the Channel Islands for 3 or 4 days, and then could do the same thing in reverse, or go to Brighton and then hop along the coast. And the third option, I guess, is to hug the UK coast and go to potentially Eastbourne, which is Sovereign Harbour, and there's not much between Dover and Eastbourne in terms of breaking up the journey, so that would be quite a long hop. And then you could go along the coast to the Isle of Wight, but I'm just concerned about how busy it's going to be. Now the other option is to go and enjoy East Coast anchorages all up these rivers here, but this is my home stomping ground, so I'm used to these, and I'd quite like to do something a bit different. Or we could go up towards Le Havre, which again we did a couple of seasons ago. So I fancy France, I really do fancy France. So, you know, if what ends up happening is we don't make it to Cherbourg because we don't get the weather window, we don't get the wind, then I think, you know, going along to Calais, going along to these ports along the French coast, they're all marinas, unfortunately. There's no real sort of quiet anchorages, but there'll be lots of nice little sort of places to go in the towns, and then we just turn around and come back again. And it doesn't sound like the most ambitious option, but I think we have to play the weather to a degree. Anyway, that's where we are. I think over the next couple of weeks I'll be watching Predict Wind very closely.